Project Top Fuel is finally starting to see some progress. It's been a long time coming. Who would have thought trying to revive a 1970 Top Fuel dragster and return it to its original running condition would be so difficult, right? There's museum cars out there, tons of them, but they just sit there. You got cackle cars, but all they have to do is just make noise. And you have contemporary front engine top fuelers out there, but they're all made out of new parts. Doing this is like just another level. But we're getting there, we're making progress. And today I want to talk about these magnetos, but before I do that, I'll just give you a quick rundown on everything else that's going on here. On the car, we've got the brakes all back together again. Dr. Art got the calipers, they've been rebuilt and modified to take the more contemporary pucks. So we're using the old calipers with new pucks. That's all together and good to go. There were some things I had to do on the motor plate, a couple of holes I had to drill, and that's all done. We've got our clutch. So you remember a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, I did a video on how these centrifugal clutches work, but I used a more contemporary one to just explain the theory and operation. Now we've got the actual clutch from Crowler, and this thing is a jewel. So at this point, I've taken everything out of the boxes. I've mock assembled it. It all fits together perfectly. I mean, they really did an outstanding job on this thing. And when we're ready to put it in the car, we'll go through every step. So this way you can see how these things are assembled and how they're set and all that. We're almost ready to put it into the car. We're just waiting for a throw-up bearing. And that's been ordered and it's on its way here now. So clutch video, deep in-depth clutch video coming within the next week. What else was there? Engine blocks. So as we explained early on, this block is not the healthiest thing in the world. It's massively overboard. I forget how big over it is, but the cylinder walls are paper thin, and it's filled with rotting, cracking concrete. So this block is not going to be long for this world. Jeff has ordered 2 new blocks, or didn't order 2 new blocks. He bought 2 blocks to replace this one. One of them is on its way to the machine shop as we speak. And this one is going to go together just so we can get our settings and all of the initial guesswork out of the way. So with this one, we'll get the fuel system dialed in, we'll get everything just dialed in, we'll get the clutch dialed in as far as launching. We'll do all of our warm-ups, put it on the ground, we'll do a couple of 60-footers, and that's it. I would not push this engine any further than just, like I said, 60-footers. By the time we get to that point, we'll have a good block and everything else we need from the machine shop so we can put together a real engine and actually send this thing, because Jeff wants to go for the ride and we're going to send him. So I think that's everything I needed to cover. Okay, let's talk about the Magneto. This is a crucial part of any Nitro car, but this in particular, I want to talk about these Vertex, Scintilla, which was the original manufacturer, Ronco, which this is a Ronco version, Vertex, a bunch of different companies have made this Magneto over the years, over the decades. And in my mind, I can't think of anything that's even really a close second. This is the most successful internal combustion component of all time. Why do I say that? Because these were originally produced in Switzerland during the First World War for aircraft use. Like the Red Baron had one of these things in his plane firing the engine. Snoopy might have had one too, I don't know. But that's the origin of these Magnetos. World War I fighting planes. Since then, it's been produced by many different companies over many different generations, but through it all, right up until today, modern ones you could go by right now, it's completely unchanged from the original design. Just amazing. They function, so as you saw in the clip at the beginning of this video, this thing functions perfectly. They're built with that old world Swiss, You know, Swiss, the knives and the clocks, Swiss, right? They're built with that old world Swiss precision. And you feel it. It oozes out of these things every time you touch one. They're like jewels. Every little bit of it is just of the finest quality. Every bit of it fits together exactly just perfect. And they function nearly forever. So for you guys that aren't familiar with what a magneto is, you've got an excuse, because these things really haven't been popular in eons. They're still used in certain applications where carrying a battery just isn't the thing to do. Push start cars like sprint cars and whatnot still use magnetos. Nitro cars use magnetos. But if you're not familiar with it, it's a very simple device. As I said, this part of it right here, the main body of it, has been unchanged for over 100 years. The bases will change depending on what engine it's going into. And obviously, in this case, it's for an early Chrysler Hemi. But this part of it right here, inside this cylinder, you have a generator, simple, small generator, and you have a transformer. Now, you could also call it a coil. To call a coil a transformer, they're not quite exactly the same. A coil is going to produce a DC spark. So typically on our cars, motorcycles, everything, they use a DC electrical system. They use a DC coil, and it throws a DC spark. The AC generator in this thing triggers a transformer, and the transformer creates an AC spark. The difference is a DC spark has to spark to a ground, or it has to create a circuit. So whatever a DC coil is going to spark to has to be grounded in some way to the device that's creating the spark to create that circle. Not so with AC. With AC, the spark on this thing will jump to anything metal. It doesn't have to be grounded. It's one of the reasons why they're so effective in an application like Nitro. It's just great, and you can see the spark they threw. Now, a couple of unique things about these particular magnetos and the way they're spec'd. The first is that the magnets that they use in these tend to actually get stronger as they sit. See, most magnetos, Mallory's, and most magnetos will literally break down as they sit. So you take a Mallory mag and you put it on the shelf and you go back to it 5 years later, 10 years later, it's dead as a doornail. It's got to be charged. And if you use them in continuous use, you've always had to have a couple of sets of mags on hand, because they need to be recharged periodically after X amount of runs or X amount of usage. Where the magnets in these things stay steady and consistent, and in some cases will actually get stronger as they sit. So like it's an eternal ignition system. There was a period of time, and I don't remember which ones they were, if they were Vertex or Ronco versions of this, and they're all the same, just passed down from manufacturer to manufacturer. There was a period of time where the transformers or the coils they were using in these would break down, but that was a limited run of them, and I haven't heard of that sort of thing happening since I was in my 30s. So I think that's pretty well knocked. When they would break down, the goop would run down into the base of it and would harden, and it would be hard to turn, and this one turns like butter. So you've got your generator, and you've got your transformer or coil, and then this is your coil wire, and this plugs into the cap right there at the top, so there's no external wiring for it. The caps, you talk about precision, okay, and you talk about like leaving no stone unturned. They're just, even the rotor is held in place with these two set screws, so that there's no vibration, no movement, no chance of anything going wrong. The wires are screwed into the bottom of the cap. Those screws will pierce the metal, the center of the wire, and they're anchored, so there's no chance of the wire pulling out or there being a gap for the spark to have to jump. No, it's all very precision, all very tight. They use, it's a single point ignition system. So here's the thing you need to understand about points. Because in most racing, in most racing applications, electronic ignition has been the norm for 40 or 50 years at this point. But in nitro, we were actually using single point ignition systems on Mallory mags up until, I'm going to say middle 1990s. They were using Mallory Super Mag 5s, 6s, 7s. The number has to do with the amperage. This is a 3 amp mag, and I'm going to get into that in a couple of minutes. But the points were the norm in Top Fuel and Funny Car until the middle 90s. It was a big set of points on the top of them. They ran to 8,500 RPM, no problem. The ignition system was the least of the problem that was encountered with the cars of that era. Put it in perspective, your first 4-second quarter-mile runs, your first 300+ mile-an-hour runs were all accomplished with single-point ignitions and a condenser. Actually, I used one of those condensers on Bottle Rocket over here. It's this giant, long, besides the point. The points on this, like I said, they're good to like 8,500, 9,000 RPM, like without question, but people do spin them faster. The contacts on these things are actually made of platinum. They're not just platinum plated, they're fully platinum. They're just jewels. It's a jewel. Like I say, when you hold one of these things, when you work with it, when you're literally experiencing the finest of old world technology, built in such a way that it has withstood the test of time for over a century and still does the job it's supposed to do today. Yeah, I'm very fond of these. All right, so let's talk about the requirements for nitro, for what we're using here. These 3 amp mags were good right up until around 1973, 1974. And the output of the mag, the amperage output of the mag, is necessary. What the amount of amperage that's necessary is dictated by the volume of fuel that you're attempting to burn. So around that period of time, 1973, 1974, they started overdriving the pumps. They had the Hilborn 175s, which is what we're using on this thing, the Enderley 1100s, and they were starting to overdrive them. So they're running them 10%, 20%, 30% over crankshaft, over camshaft speed. And at that point, the volume of fuel was too much for the 3 amp mag to handle. And that's when the other mags started, like the Mallorys, started to gain foothold. There were people who were boosting these things up during this period of time, like right up until around 1980 is when like the last of them finally disappeared. And what they would do is they would use an external transformer. They would take the coil or the transformer out of here, put a bigger generator in it, and then use an external transformer. And they would also use a larger diameter cap, because once you go past that 3 amp deal, then the spacing becomes an issue. The spacing of the wires and the cap becomes an issue. So they went for a bigger diameter cap so that there wouldn't be any spark arcing. But that was really beyond the scope of what these things were good for. And evolutionarily speaking, I can't forget that. Right. As time went on, the 5 amp mags were good right up until around 1990. Then they started boosting them up to 6 amps, 7 amps, until today. And of course, they added the second Magneto. And you got to today where they're using 44 amp mags. You know, it's just weld with these things. I love these things. I absolutely adore these things. So this one is good to go. As you saw, we tested it, bright blue snapping spark. This one is set for nitro. So these Magnetos come with an internal mechanical advance setup that you can tune. And this one over here is locked out. Got to be careful not to turn it so I don't zap myself. This one is locked out, and we need that for nitro. There's no advance curve for it, but we set it at idle is what it's going to be through the entire range. And this one is good to go for that. And for all intents and purposes, this is all the mag we're going to need. And it does the job. So that's the update on all of the bits and pieces that we've got so far. Clutch input shaft, all of that. We're still waiting on a coupler to go from the reverser to the rear end, and we're still waiting for a throw-up bearing for our clutch can here. So, and the throw-up bearing is actually a Ford, the parts inside the clutch can, and this was true right up until they went to the clutch management systems. So right up until like the late 1980s, all of the clutch cans used 1930s Ford throw-up bearing assembly. So the cross shaft and the candlestick and the throw-up bearing itself are all factory Ford light truck parts. So we're waiting for, we got the candlestick and the cross shaft, so we're just waiting for the throw-up bearing and the retainer spring. And we should have all of that by the end of next week. And at that point, we'll put the clutch in. And like I said, I'll take you step by step, every bit of it, and setting it. Like I said, if you follow this series, by the time you're done, follow everything that's on here, you'll be able to take an assortment of parts like this and put it together and make it function as a blown nitro car. I don't know how well it's going to function. I don't know how well this is going to function until you actually get there. But so far, so good. We're making progress. And that's it for now. I'll see you tomorrow.